everyone, and welcome to Exploring Cinema. I'm Nate.
And I'm Dylan.
And I am Adam.
And this is our third and final movie for the month of December. We're going to be taking a little 1 to 2 week break over the holidays here. But for this month, we've each just decided to pick one movie that we kind of wanted to finally get the other two to watch. We started it off. I chose Dial M for Murder. And then Adam introduced Dylan and I to the wonderful world of Gremlins, which was very fun. And then Dylan chose a movie that I had heard of, but wasn't really too on my radar. And Adam, were you aware of this movie at all?
0%.
Okay. And what's also fun is, so I guess, Dylan, why did you choose Muriel's Wedding?
Yeah, I guess now that you phrased the assignment that way, I guess I kind of sidestepped one of the rules because you could remove the word finally. Because I did not know what this movie was until about 2 weeks ago when we were already in the process of choosing movies. And I had some other ones. And then I saw this and it was just such a unique kind of it's really serious and comedy and kind of mashing them together. And then Toni Collette's performance. And I know that we all love Toni Collette. And after it was over, I just kept thinking about it. And then the more I thought about it, it was really the perfect choice, I feel like, for our tastes, kind of all three of ours, I feel like. So I took a chance and went with Muriel's Wedding.
Yeah, and speaking for just myself at least, I'm really glad that you picked this because whereas with Gremlins, I was very appreciative of Adam for finally pushing me over the hump.
Yes, I am glad that I've seen Gremlins now.
But that was at least always something I had planned. It's been on the watch list for a really long time. And Adam just gave me that extra nudge. With Muriel's Wedding, honestly, if you hadn't chosen this, I don't know if I would have watched this movie in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Not out of just zero interest, but my watch list is 1,000 movies long. And it just wasn't that high of a priority for me, where at least every December I'm like, is this the year I finally watch Gremlins?
Yeah.
So before we get into our opening statements, the at a glance section. So Muriel's Wedding, a big cult favorite from Adam. You would like to address the room.
It's from me. No, I was just going to say, do we want to tell people what Muriel's Wedding is about?
Yes, we do. I don't know if I want to say I got ahead of myself or just kind of skipped it entirely.
We do that. We get into things sometimes,
Right. Yes. So thank you. Please, Adam, what is Muriel's Wedding about?
Muriel's Wedding from 1994. A young social outcast in Australia steals money from her parents to finance a vacation where she hopes to find happiness and perhaps love.
And that is barely half of the story.
It's the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, and I guess that's fitting because from what I've read, the trailers and the advertisements for this movie were very kind of misleading about kind of a traditional kind of rom-com. It's about a wedding and people, just zany hijinks, and then in the end she falls in love. And that is definitely not what this movie is.
Yeah, I was just expecting she goes on this trip and then she just kind of hangs out there for a week and eventually meets somebody. That's what I was expecting to get into.
Yeah.
So at a glance, Muriel's Wedding from 1994, directed by P.J. Hogan, who also went on to direct My Best Friend's Wedding with Julia Roberts and Hugh Grant, one of their sort of big 90s idol rom-com collaborations. It had a budget of $9 million and it made $52 million globally. So successful financially.
And this was an Australian film, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
An Australian movie. So it didn't so it's a 1994 movie, but it didn't come out in the US until March of 1995, where it then went on to make $15 million in the US in 95, which was 96th at the box office, which isn't bad for just kind of a small Australian import, indie weird
in the 90s too. Now I feel like you could be like, oh yeah, it's some weird eclectic movie showed up from overseas and it's doing well. In the 90s, I feel like, granted, we weren't necessarily movie fanatics at the time, but I don't know who would go see that.
Also million... the Hollywood machine was just at its peak in the 90s.
Yeah,
so it wasn't like people were kind of looking around for there were obviously a strong subset of people who were. But there were big hits coming out a lot in the 90s. Accolades, pretty well-reviewed movie across the board, 81% on Rotten Tomatoes, 7.2 on IMDb, and a 3.8 on Letterboxd. It did win Best Picture. It won 4 ACTA awards, which is the Australian Academy of Cinema and Television.
Okay, nice.
It won Best Picture. It won Best Actress for Toni Collette. It won Best Supporting Actress for Rachel Griffiths. And it won Best Sound.
Okay.
And then Toni Collette also got a Golden Globe nomination.
Nice.
Okay.
All right.
So this movie did well for itself at the time. And I think has just kind of continued to be a favorite among a certain subset of movie viewers. And yeah, just really glad that I saw it. And really quickly, before we move on, remind everybody to like and subscribe to help the channel grow, and make sure you get notified every time we do one of these deep dives. We do about one a week. Kind of mentioned this month we've already done Dial M for Murder and Gremlins, and now we're doing Muriel's Wedding. We did a bunch of old period pieces in November, so we try to mix it up and do different types of movies every week. Maybe with we might start doing, I think, well, we start with November and October, really sort of a monthly theme. We got one picked out for January, which we think will be really interesting. So be on the lookout for that. And kicking off January, to give you a little taste of what types of movies or kind of what the theme will be, we're going to be watching Paper Moon. Ryan O'Neal just passed away recently, and while we did do an episode on Barry Lyndon about a month ago, which we really enjoyed and was a really fun episode, we thought Paper Moon would be a really fun one to dive into as well, because I had never seen it. It's been towards the top of my watch list for a long time. I don't think Adam has seen it. Dylan, have you seen Paper Moon?
I saw it when I was younger. My dad showed it to me, but
I thought that was the case.
Yeah, so I remember the broad strokes, but I definitely am looking forward to rewatching it.
Yeah. So that one should be fun. Not going to totally reveal what our theme for that month is going to be yet, but you
can keep it guessing.
You'll figure it out as we go along.
All the titles are space themed and the universe. Sun, a moon. No, you can keep going.
So opening statements. Dylan, this was your pick, so I'd like to hear from you first.
All right. Well, Muriel's Wedding is a movie that snuck up on me with how serious it was. It has the confidence to go in directions that you don't expect, and it succeeds in the end because it stays grounded in its characters and their growth, especially Muriel herself, who's portrayed brilliantly by Toni Collette. I've thought about it a lot since I saw it, and the Waterloo scene alone demands a rewatch.
Yeah, I've watched that scene on YouTube like 20 times.
It's fantastic.
One of the comments I have as well, and I think the top comment on YouTube is like, "This is the best scene in Australian cinematic history right here."
Which was almost not in the movie, but we will.
Ooh, there's a tidbit.
We will get into that a little bit later. I've got a couple tidbits about that scene because that's like basically the only reading I was interested in doing. So that leads us directly into my opening statement, which is just ABBA.
That too.
That's not my whole opening statement, but I also just that this is one of the saddest comedies I've ever seen.
Ooh,
and that it's way ahead of its time. Yeah, I mean, this just felt. I mean, we already talked about how, Dylan, you mentioned how this was sort of sold in the trailers, which I haven't seen, but and even just the title of it and kind of the poster and the sort of pitch or elevator pitch, what this is, and it's not what I expected at all. I was just expecting another sort of 90s feel-good rom-com, which could have been very fun as well. Like, you can see in this movie that they were capable of doing that. If that's the direction they wanted to go. But yeah, like you said, I was just continually surprised at the directions it chose to go and how this just felt to me like the sort of what I expect now with like a well-reviewed coming of age movie that came out in like the 2010s.
Yeah. I see where you're coming from with that. Kind of, it is way ahead of its time, and it seems kind of like if it came out today, I would expect the zigs and zags with the plot and how serious it is. I'd be like, okay, yeah, this is how they do it now. But 1994 is just so fascinating, so unexpected.
Yeah, we were too young. I'm not sure if it was a term at all or how much it was used, but dramedy is something that's just very commonly heard now. Particularly, I feel like with TV shows. where you like things listed as comedies now. There are a lot of people who are expecting like The Hangover or just something more traditionally. Just like the whole point of this movie is to be funny.
Yeah, it's going to remind you that it's a comedy at every turn.
Right, like a joke every 30 seconds. Whereas like a lot of times now we get things labeled as comedies that are more in line with like Barbie.
Yeah, that's a
or
good.
Like that type of lane where it's like there's going to be some real shit in this movie. You're also going to laugh, but then I think you get people like sometimes like movies called comedies. I'll introduce them to my parents now, and they still expect sometimes like just a straightforward comedy like Midnight Run, or Beverly Hills Cop, or any other type of buddy cop comedy. Those are the only ones. But but you know what I mean? Where it like even something like Yorgos has a new movie coming out, like The Favorite, which is listed as a comedy, and like the Golden Globes will categorize it as a comedy. And then you watch it and it's really funny and it's also super fucking depressing.
Yeah.
And so that's where I feel like Muriel's Wedding would have fit in really well if it came out in like 2015.
Yeah. Agreed.
How about you, Adam? What do you think? You just finished this like very, very recently, right?
Yeah, like today.
An hour ago.
Okay. Yeah, like today. I will say it was a weird viewing experience because I had to watch it sort of in sections. So I would watch it in like 5 or like 10 to 20 minute increments. And then go back to doing the things I was doing today. So it was kind of choppy. So I do want to rewatch it. But so I can sit it in its entirety, and also like as you said, like the Waterloo scene in itself needs to be re-seen. But right now, what I just had for the opening statement, because I have a better closing statement, at least I hope so, is just the power of a name change.
Yeah. What a great little wrinkle that was.
Yeah,
right?
I wasn't expecting that at all.
She's tricking herself into growth. She's tricking herself to try to do some maintenance on herself, and I think that's fun.
And I think there's some positives that come out of that, but also like mostly negatives.
Yeah, like is it positive, is it negative, and then like why, and why did it work or why didn't it work? Like all of that is like it's coming to terms with your own self, and that's a lot of this movie is just finding yourself and finding your truth to a certain extent. So changing your name doesn't change who you are.
I mean, right? Even the title card of the kind of chapters of this movie, when it gets to the wedding, it says Muriel's wedding.
Muriel's wedding.
Which I thought was a really great little touch. Like the movie is Muriel's wedding, but this moment in the story was Muriel's wedding.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna get that down eventually, Dylan.
It's so tough. It's
Muriel.
He's like, I only saw it 2 weeks ago. Don't judge me.
All right.
Yeah, it was fascinating. There are definitely a lot of moments that hit a lot harder in this movie than I was expecting. I definitely thought I was just getting like basically a Hugh Grant.
Yeah, I bet you did. Standard boilerplate.
I bet you thought that's what you were getting.
What's that?
I said, I bet that's what you thought you were getting.
It absolutely is.
Same. And I was just, and then it just very early, it kind of starts to just deviate from that path more and more and more, and that's like, oh, okay, all right.
Well, I have a question for Dylan, I guess. Well, it's not but who introduced this to you, and had they seen it before?
Yes, so this was introduced to me by Alec Spears, a good friend and husband of my friend Ellie, Hannah's sister, and he is from Australia.
Okay.
And so
I met him.
He was like,
so this movie is, he's like shown this to, groups of his friends before. He's kind of tried to be like, hey, this is like a really big kind of cult classic in Australia that we all love. To mixed reviews, honestly.
Understandably so.
Yeah.
Well, I will be championing this movie every chance I get.
That's same. That was part of it too. I was like, okay, he just put me onto this movie and I just wanted to thank him for it. And then I'm like, oh, and now I have this opportunity. I get to choose any movie that we can do an episode on. Like, well, how about that? So I hope I'm paying it forward.
Yeah. So thank you, Alec. So let's dive into the defining moments.
Oh, I have a lot of them.
All right, Dylan, what do you got?
Okay. So first off, in all caps, Waterloo. The Waterloo scene. Should we just start with that?
This the best Waterloo scene that we've watched in the last 2 months?
Right.
Well, it's better. It is. It's a better Waterloo scene than Eurovision Song Contest from a couple years ago.
Okay, yeah.
That's a pretty solid Waterloo scene as well. So
no, I just think in the context of the story, you're about 25 minutes in, 30 minutes in, Muriel, it's mostly been very depressing, her life and her story, and just to see her kind of come out of her shell for this talent show performance with her new friend, it's just like an overload of like happiness and like feel good vibes. Like, and her nemesis is like, you know, fighting with her friend. It's just like all this stuff at once kind of comes out of nowhere. But I was just like mesmerized. And then there's the one shot in particular where she's kind of behind her friend and she moves her hair like slowly.
I have a tidbit about that, which I will share later.
Yeah, that was when it went up a whole nother notch to like, okay, iconic. Iconic moment.
And when like one of them's facing this way, and then one of them's facing this way, and then they switch.
Yeah,
like when they turn, I was like, "This is fucking this is gold." Like,
I pretty strongly believe that we could do an entire episode just on that scene.
Oh yeah,
and I feel pretty well prepared to do so. We won't dive in. You know, we're going to talk about other stuff too.
Yeah. So how about this? How about we'll go through all the other scenes, and then at the end we can come back to the Wilder specifically.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what else you got, Dylan?
So okay, I also had her breakdown in the wedding gown shop when she just kind of just starts bawling. That was just so hard to watch, and that was again another like kind of gut punch. Like, wow, this movie, you know, the drama is real, and it's like, you know, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling, you know, the emotion that this character is going through. I also have meeting the swimmer. I forget what his name was.
Oh yeah,
Archie or whatever, or yeah, Van Garkel or whatever. He has some weird Van Arkel.
It's I believe it's Bryce.
Van Arkel.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry, David Van Arkel.
David Van Arkel. Okay, yeah. Meeting him and just kind of,
I think it's Bryce.
Like Bryce is the guy that goes into that meets her at the video store and asks her out.
Oh,
okay. Yeah. I did like that too. Just meeting him and just like that whole setup and like to your point, Nate, like a lot of movies, that device would have been like the whole movie. Like, you know, lovable loser character who wants to get married, and now this guy needs to get married, and there's the whole movie is that setup. Whereas with this movie, it's just like one piece. It's just kind of, but yeah, just meeting him and just his kind of reaction to her and her reaction to him, and just because at this point in the movie, you're also kind of expecting and hoping kind of more growth from Muriel, and to see her immediately just be all in on this idea, which you know is not a good idea. Like, it's interesting. It's another moment where the movie is like showing you a side of the main character that isn't necessarily like good. Like you're seeing the faults, you know, and that very interesting. And also when he's like, I don't know about this anymore. Like, can we call that blonde back? Like, the look on his face. And then I have the entire wedding start to finish, just how crazy happy she is, but also like obviously the undertones of like, this is really messed up. And then all the little details, her dad's there, the stuff with her mom, her conversation with her friend at the end. What's her friend's name? I keep forgetting.
It's not Rachel Griffiths.
I know. I want to keep saying Rachel, but I know it's not Rachel.
Rhonda is the name of Rachel Griffiths' character. Yeah.
Rhonda Eppenstock.
Nice. Yeah, the conversation with her, just that whole thing, which then leads directly into the honeymoon scene, which was definitely one of my favorites when they get back to his, place or whatever. He's just like, all right, I'm going to go swim. And then he just kind of calls her out, like, what kind of person like would do this? And she's just like, she's just like, well, you did it. And then like the line of like, well, I just want to win. And she's like, me too. And that was like, just, great scene. Just great scene.
Well, and that is just like, that's the endemic of the, like her entire like ethos, like in her life. She has no idea, but she knows she wants to win at life or win at the thing. And that's the thing, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's her competition somehow, even though that's not a competition at all. Like,
and then I have three more really quick. Her mom's tragic end, which at the time felt way out of left field. And I was like, wow, like this movie is really, but I think
that was really well set up.
Yeah, just the little bits throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And then her scene with the dad at the end in the backyard. Mm-hmm. I really loved that. I thought that was in a very short time, they kind of wrapped up like their kind of relationship and their little tandem parallel arcs. And I just thought that was well done. And then the car ride at the very end, the kind of joyous, uplifting, like just the long shot of her slowly smiling, driving away, saying goodbye to Porpoise Spit. I mean, yeah, just felt kind of and that ending felt almost 80s-ish. Like so much of the movie feels ahead of its time, and then that ending is just like we're leaving town. It's gonna be good. Like,
yeah,
and it's good.
Yeah, it's earned though.
It is
for
earned.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel like some sort of cheap, like everybody smile now ending, because like I don't know.
We haven't seen her smile very much.
That's true, but she goes through it. She has to go through a lot to get to that point, and you believe it when she gets there. You listed everyone I had.
Okay.
Other than just like anytime somebody says you're terrible, Muriel.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want that on a t-shirt. I think I sent you one, Dylan, actually, of one that I had found on like Etsy or something.
Yeah, we were looking at the merch. No, that's a great shirt.
Yeah.
And yeah, what an interesting kind of running joke throughout put in there. Just very interesting.
Yeah, I want to know
and
like
fun to
where
imitate.
that came from.
Mm-hmm.
Did he just manifest that, or is that something he heard at some point and thought like that just sounds good?
Yeah.
Then I
Like, we
need
need
to put it in a
people to
movie.
constantly tell her she's awful, like as if she wasn't
She
aware.
says it in such like a mischievous way, though. Like she's a little bit proud of her.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Terrible, Muriel.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just very fun every time she says it. The look on the sister's face is always great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you hit every other one that I had.
I had 2 extras. It was getting booted from the friend group. I think and friend group, so obviously a loose term. I think that was a big deal. And then you see her reaction to losing the friend group to the reaction of the friend that's already crying to being like cheated on, and it's just like so disproportionate, but it matters the same gravity to each of them, right? To a certain degree. And then the nightclub scene and like the aftermath at like the apartment.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was another hard tonal shift.
Yeah.
It went from like physical, zany kind of hookup humor to just like she has a tumor on her spine.
Well, first of all,
like,
because even before we get there, like Muriel's finally gonna have sex. She's gonna have like what people would mainly perceive as like a very good time. She's found what she's been looking for.
Yeah, a nice guy that
a nice
video
guy.
store.
They're kind of on the same level, so to speak. Like he's like I want to be honest with you. Like I'm a ticket collector or whatever the hell it is, and she's like that's fine. And they're like sick, and then they get to business, and then like those 2 guys come out and just like pin him to the floor and like what were you doing to her? and then I have cancer. Like
Rhonda's. Yeah, what'd you think of that, Nate? Because I felt like it was a very hard shift. This movie has a lot of hard tonal shifts.
It reminds me a lot of sorry to cut you off before we do that. It reminds me a lot of when we did the review on our other channel, Speak Film and Enter, of The Butterfly Effect. How they just pack as many things as possible into a
lot of stuff happens in this movie.
Yeah. But that's what this reminded me of. So sorry, Nate. What did you think about it?
Yeah, about that scene. It was really interesting to me, sort of where it goes after that, where so many movies about kind of young, insecure people, this sort of standard coming of age arc where like you don't like yourself, so you're not very interested in the people who like that version of you. You know, so we meet that guy at the video store. And that seems to be that, like what I thought we were getting into was like, oh, this is going to be the guy, like sort of the dork who likes her for who she is, but she's not comfortable with that yet.
Yeah.
She kind of pushes him away and looks for other people. And then that isn't what this movie gives us at all. They actually do kind of hit it off, but then the movie just sort of like sets him aside forever. You know, like he's at the wedding and he's bummed, but he's not the person who she goes running back to at the end of the movie. And I think that's kind of where this scene or this sequence comes into play, where it shows us what the real and most important relationship in this movie is. Like, even when she's out with him, she's like, well, again, I'm going to forget her name. Rhonda.
Yeah.
It's because it starts with the same letter as the actress's name. That's why I keep screwing this up. But you know, like she wants to be where Rhonda is. And there's an element of that feels a little unhealthy. Especially when they're out and she's on a date and they're both clearly in a place where they don't necessarily feel like they belong.
Yeah.
But then they go back and they start hooking up and they kind of like each other. And then it's just like this terrible thing with Rhonda is revealed. And it's kind of the movie, I think, just sort of redirecting our focus on what the primary relationship in this movie is going to be. Because then from that point forward, that guy isn't really around much at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too, because in the immediate aftermath of that, you know, Muriel doesn't really rise to the occasion of like taking care of Rhonda and making sure that Rhonda doesn't have to move back home. And, you know, kind of another part where maybe a different movie would have pursued it that way, right? She would have been like, well, I'm gonna be a good friend to you, and through that she would have grown as right. But instead we see her kind of start to almost neglect Rhonda a little bit and kind of like, you know, not rise to the occasion, and then so then that, it's kind of hard to watch, which then leads to like the scene at the wedding. I feel like where she kind of calls her out on it.
Yeah, and to me that's like a manifestation of like she doesn't like who she is, so she's not gonna put in extra effort for the other people. You know what I mean? Like you can't care about somebody else if you don't care about yourself. So like how do you how do you let that relationship atrophy? Because like you're letting yourself atrophy in real time by doing that, right? If that's the relationship you care about, like, and then so how does she come back to that? How does she grow from knowing that, like, hey, that's the problem? And that I think that's where like kind of the movie not takes off, but where it really gets like more life to it.
Yeah, I to kind of build off of that point with their relationship, how you guys said like she isn't really aware of how much she's needed at that point. I think part of that is just like the lack of self-confidence, and she can't really imagine being this instrumental in somebody else's life. And then I think there's an element of when you kind of hate yourself and life looks easy for other people, you feel a little, I mean, there's obviously like an envy and a jealousy there, but there's kind of an element of like, this is really like just getting by on a daily basis is really, really hard work for me. And adding anything else to that mix just doesn't feel, it feels wrong in a way where it doesn't feel like something you should have to do. And it's a selfish way of thinking, but when you don't like yourself, that's just kind of, that can happen. And so, I mean, I just think this movie captures the character of Muriel so well, and just parts of her, you can like, so many people can see parts of themselves in her. Where like Adam, you mentioned to me before we started recording, like you finished this like 2 hours ago, and just like even between the time when you finished it and like now, like it just keeps going up in your head. And I had the same experience.
Same.
And I think Dylan, that's why you kind of like, you kept being like, well, I think I want to pick this movie, but maybe something else. And then like 3 days later, you'd be like, no, I'm like getting more sure I want to pick Muriel's Wedding. The character is just so damn good and so real that she's just so easy to come back to and keep talking about and to root for.
Yeah, I told Nate before we started, I was like, I logged the movie and I was like, like 20 minutes there, I was like, you know what? I think it deserves like another half star. And like, again, because I watched it in such a choppy fashion, I'm like, well, if I watch this again in its entirety, like in one sitting, it will be going up. So like, I've already raised it in my head, basically another star.
In like 2 hours.
Like 2 hours. Like, it just sits, and it just every time you think about something else is coming up, and you know, you find yourself going, oh, that's me, or you know.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, should we go to the questions? It's going to turn into a long episode. I can tell. There's a lot to talk about.
Well, I think Gremlins was a little long too, so we're fine.
We haven't even really touched on Toni Collette's amazing performance.
We haven't.
Okay, we can go to the questions though. We'll come back around.
So my only question that I have basically merges with my observations and musings. So I guess first I wanted to ask you guys, because I didn't realize that I wasn't 100% sure on this. Is that competition that they're in, is that purely a lip syncing competition, or is that just like a talent show?
It looked like just a talent show.
Yeah, I got the impression it was just a talent show. Okay,
so then with that, if it's a talent show, what do we think that guy was doing who was dressed as Robin?
Oh, so I did read this, and when I was kind of looking up some tidbits.
Do you have an answer?
Not necessarily an answer, but sort of an explanation. Okay. During the theatrical release, there's like Robin, and there's a woman in like a Wonder Woman like outfit, and they're like featured in that. And in this version, which is just the released version after the fact, Wonder Woman's not there at all, and you sort of see Robin for like 3 seconds.
Okay, so
he's on stage and they're like kind of accepting their victory, basically.
Yeah, he's up there just being, I got second place. Like, so I don't really know, but I know that like there's clearly like Wonder Woman was supposed to be in there for a short bit, so I'm sure there was a little bit more to it, and they just edited it down and we're like, we don't need that. It doesn't serve any purpose. But
okay, that's sure. I
know it's a disappointing answer, but
yeah, but I mean, like for a talent, I still just want to know what that guy was doing.
Maybe like his best Adam West impression.
Or did he lip sync Ice Ice Baby?
Ooh,
dressed as Robin.
Why not?
Why not is exactly right. There are no rules in this talent show if you can do what they did.
Yeah, no. It was a cruise, right? Or was it?
I don't think it was a cruise. It was just like at a resort.
It was just a resort. Okay,
like an island resort.
Yeah. Okay. So my questions have kind of already been answered. The first one was kind of like, your viewing experience. So Adam, you've already said you watched it in very choppy segments,
Mm-hmm.
and then also kind of just the initial reaction or like in the moment watching it versus once the movie ended and you kind of think about it more. Like if you also shared kind of the experience I did, where in certain parts of this movie I was still even, I was like, is this like, I couldn't tell how good it really was because the shifts were so hard, and I was like, oh, okay, we're doing this now, and then like, oh, okay, we're doing this now. And so in the moment, I kind of had a lot of doubts, but then almost as soon as it ended, I was like, okay. And then more I've thought about it. So, but it sounds like that was kind of a similar experience. Or were you all in the whole time, Nate? Were you like,
I was pretty much all in the entire time. And it was interesting to me because you had said that to me before I watched it.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, I'm picking this mostly because I don't really know how I feel about it yet.
Got
a lot of like tonal shifts, and I was watching it, and then like, I mean, of course, once we got to the Waterloo scene, I was just like, oh, this is incredible. This is one of the best things I've ever seen in a movie, and like this is what movies are for.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of continued, even like with the tonal shifts. I was like, every time it did one of those, I was kind of like, I felt proud of the movie.
Yeah,
because I was like, ooh, like they actually had the guts to go here and trust that their audience would follow them along. When, like we mentioned, we're all kind of like, oh, this isn't what I thought it would be.
Yeah.
But at least we're at a point now where like we all watch enough movies where I think we're a little more open-minded to like sudden like moments.
Yeah.
You know?
Sure.
Well, so
I think that Waterloo scene is the director saying like, hey guys, audience, don't worry about it. I've got you. We're going to have fun. The first 15, 20, whatever half hour this is super weird. And like the opening scene at the wedding is like very cringy and very awful. And all these people are terrible people. And you don't think that like she's going to do anything well. And then he's just like, I'm going to inject some fun. I've got you. We're going to get there together. And it's very much like him settling us down and being like, we're good. We're good. We're going to like it, you know?
And very, you know, it makes Muriel very endearing because, again, at this point, she's mostly kind of just, it's been kind of a sad story for her. And it's kind of like, oh man, is the whole movie going to be kind of, but then she shows that side of her. It's like, oh, okay, wow. Like there's a whole nother. And I just felt like it was like the perfect fusion of like music and movie, in the sense that like the movie has established that like ABBA music is going to be part of this movie, and the way that it uses that music when it chooses to use it is just so perfect. I mean, because at this point we know that she loves ABBA, so then when she's performing this song, it's totally believable, and she's just met this friend who's kind of a wild, like, we're going to take chances, so it's very believable that she talked her into it, right? Everything's totally believable, and then she's good and it's fun, and you're like, oh great, this is awesome. And then it fits thematically so perfectly because, again, you know, she's kind of performing, you know, to win, quote unquote, which, so it's like, and she does win, and it's kind of interesting the parallels between that and like her wedding later on, you know, and so it's just, again, I just felt like the perfect use of music in a movie, especially popular music.
Well, yeah, it's such a good scene.
And to go off the kind of one of the original points is like, how did you feel watching this? You were very in the moment. I wrote like a couple things I wrote down where this is painful to watch. I wrote down, despite how fucked it all is, the Waterloo scene is gold. Like, and just like this family, LOL, that mermaid shirt. Like, you know, there's like, you just get these glimpses of things and you're like, you know what, we're going to be okay. But we are kind of all over the place.
Well, that leads perfectly into my second question, which was, if you could only pick one genre to classify this movie in, some bizarre situation where you could only call it one word, would you go comedy, drama? Would you kind of do the cop-out dramedy? Would you just be like,
I mean, I feel like I'd have to. Dramedy feels like, anytime I hear dramedy, I think it's going to be kind of a depressing movie.
Yeah.
In a way. But this is at times, but the humor in it is so much like zanier than something I'd expect in like a dramedy. Like, I think of dramedy, I think of like kind of some of those shows that like Louis C.K. produced, like Better Things.
Okay, yeah.
Or, you know, like, I don't know. It's just very hard because the comedy moments are so out there and so weird that, I mean, this, like, honestly, cult classic just categorizes this, just defines this thing so much better than anything else, because, you know, by hearing that going in that it's gonna be a little strange.
Mhm.
There's gonna be some uniqueness to it, and there's gonna be some kind of like off the wall weirdness that's gonna be hopefully kind of endearing.
Yeah. All right, I like that. I like that.
I think I'd go with like romance, as much as it's not necessarily like a straight up like guy meets the girl meets man, man meets girl, whatever, like straight up love story. As Nate fuddles with his screen, that's
my monitors just keep going black. Really annoying. I apologize.
Just every so often your face lights up. No, I think I'd put romance because she's falling in love with herself. She's trying to figure that out. And then, I mean, and to a certain degree, you could say she's falling in love with her friend, but I don't think it's a romantic type of love, despite the fact that I would call this a romance movie. You know what I mean? Like that's
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
It's almost a coming of age movie, kind of.
For sure.
Yeah.
She's just older than our normal coming of age stories, right?
Structurally, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So those are mine.
My question, unless Nate, you had one.
No, my only question was I just want to know about that Robin guy.
Okay. My question is, what would you change your name to?
Dario.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, Dylan's already got it.
He's got a moniker. It's but like she goes from Muriel to Mariel. Like, would you go like Nate to like James?
Note.
Nate to Note? Or
Note.
Like NAUGHT? I'm not. Like
not.
Or you know.
I have no idea.
No, I don't. It would drive me crazy.
I can't just like pick a new name on YouTube.
I think I've used like Zach before, or I've used like something a little like off the beaten path, like a name with a different like a letter that's not normally like seen or something.
Yeah, so my parents, when they were just kind of like, I feel like a lot of parents reach that place where they go like, I don't know, just close your eyes and point at the book. Yeah, so that they landed on Zoltan.
Hell yeah!
Point.
Ooh,
yeah,
that would be sweet.
Zolly.
Zolly. All right, on to observation and musings. I've already said all mine, honestly, so I don't.
I have two. Okay. That was kind of my question.
Episode has been,
yeah, and I have a tidbit that kind of fits in with one of those. So I mean, should we just move right on to the tidbits?
Let's do it.
Yeah, take it away.
Yeah. So, yeah, they would not have made this movie had they not gotten the rights to the ABBA music. Like the director has said, if they didn't get the rights, the movie would not have been made because it was so integral to like the character and the story.
Amazing.
And they couldn't get it at first. And finally, he threatened to like basically fly to their house,
which he did.
Beg. And they were like, "Okay, fuck it, fine." And they gave it to him for free, but they wanted like points on the movie.
Yeah, they got
the reason they didn't want to give it to him at
profits.
First. Yeah, was because they had a bad experience before when selling their music to a movie. And then the one I have about that moment in the Napoleon scene, the Waterloo scene. I keep calling it the Napoleon scene in my head. That you really like, where she moves her hair. They rehearsed that scene for about 10 hours, and they were not wearing their wigs during the scene.
Oh,
so they had like settled into like the blocking and their places, and then when they filmed it, her hair was bigger.
Just like no,
and so they were in the wrong spots. It was a problem they weren't aware existed.
Yeah,
and so
just forgot about it.
That makes it so much funnier that Toni Collette didn't just like stop and say, "Can we start over? I can't see the camera." Instead, she just slides her hair over so you can like just see her face. She's got that smile going. And the director said he was just like cracking up as it happened. And he was so glad that Rachel Griffiths rolled with it in character and rolled with it because it was so pure. Like it sounds like they would have done it again. They would have like added it. Most likely, but it wouldn't have had the same energy.
There's a magic in it.
And that scene's all about like them becoming friends, or not becoming, but like really solidifying their friendship. And like that's something that friends would absolutely do. Like you do your zaniest, most authentic self when you're performing something just completely goofy. Yeah. That's amazing.
Like, all right, I'm just gonna move her hair real quick.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, I also think it works because there's an element of of her character that's kind of like hiding behind her a little bit.
Yeah.
Because at the beginning of that scene, she's just Toni Collette plays that scene incredibly well.
Yeah.
Where she's just so awkward and uncomfortable at the beginning. And then I like when they do the close-ups when they're just looking at each other and it's kind of like, okay, it's just you and me doing this. That's when she becomes more comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's right after she's kind of like hiding behind her a little bit. It just fits the character so well. It's just such a happy accident.
Yeah.
Where it just again goes to show like how many great moments in movies were just not planned at all. And it's just sort of like a minor miracle that they exist in the exact way that they do.
Yeah. So some of the tidbits that I had off of the obviously using ABBA's music, as you said, he flew to their house or flew to the founders' houses and talked about it. They received a percentage of the film profits. This film turned out to be so good and such a big international hit that it inspired or helped to inspire the Broadway musical Mamma Mia, which became the movie Mamma Mia. Which
I need to watch that movie now.
Yeah, which also ABBA.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. PJ Hogan, our writer and director, based Muriel's personality on himself, which I think is fun. Because how else are you can be so critical of somebody who you think you know kind of sucks?
Yeah.
I also read it was like partly inspired by his sister.
Yes, so I'm getting there. Okay. Muriel's actions were no, you're getting
back. Adam's got the tidbits. I need to trust the process.
So it based his personality on himself, but based her actions on his sister because his sister did embezzle $15,000 from their father and then disappeared to Sidney to live with a friend. So that's hilarious.
Wow.
Hardcore.
Yeah. PJ Hogan's sister.
Well, and also like just to put that in a movie and then it'd be one of the biggest like movies for your country. Like, everyone knows now.
Yeah, that's funny.
Porpoise Spit, where they are from, where this movie is set, is a fictional town, but is inspired by Tweed Heads, New South Wales, where PJ Hogan grew up. Bryce, as we talked about earlier, he's the character who asks her out on at the movie store. Yep. Guy Pearce and Eric Bana were considered for that role, which is weird to me, but I do not think that either one of them would have fit at all.
No, I think they're too good looking, or they're just
very much.
It would take me out of the movie.
I'm sorry,
like,
I was reading about Mamma Mia. Which role?
The guy who asks her out at the video store, like finally has the.
Oh yeah, no, it needs to be kind of a dork like she is.
Yeah.
And
like you can make Eric Bana look dorkier than you can make Guy Pearce look dorky, but still, I think he's too like. Yeah, hunky maybe is the word I'll use.
Wouldn't work.
Yeah. And then the last thing we always talk about, media always talks about how like the transformation that actors have to go through to become somebody or to do this. You know, Christian Bale lost X amount of pounds for the Machinist, but then gained a bunch for Batman and all that kind of shit. And like in my world, I feel like a lot of men get talked about that way. Toni Collette gained 40 pounds in 7 weeks for this role.
Wow.
That's complete dedication to the craft. That is, and then you get her performance as well on top of being like, I put a bunch of work in, and I put a bunch of work in. Like, this is it.
I mean, she must have known this is my breakout if I can like nail this. Like, she had read the script. She's like, okay, like this is it. She was only 22 at the time. Wild.
Just went for it.
Yeah.
I know we talked about a little bit before that we wanted to share some of the amazing, or not amazing, but great Muriel's Wedding letterboxd reviews. So the couple that I grabbed were undeniable proof that Mamma Mia is a genre. Toni Collette should win an Oscar for Hereditary. Me, an intellectual. Toni Collette should win an Oscar for Muriel's Wedding.
Yeah, I like that. That.
And then the last one I have, because this one's just still fun, is the ABBA cinematic universe just does not disappoint.
Yeah, I'm looking at that one right now.
So that's what I have for tidbits. That's what I had for a couple of those. Obviously, go check those out on Letterboxd. There's plenty of fun ones, plenty of good ones. A couple long-winded ones that explain a little bit of how somebody thought. But this is a lot more fun. I wish there was more tidbits. Honestly, I wish I had done even 2 days worth of research instead of 2 hours worth of research. On this.
I'm
movie.
sure we'll find some stuff that's fun.
Yeah.
All right. I believe it's the time has come.
Let's do it.
The moment we've all been waiting for.
Ooh,
it is time for the
it is
McCabe
time.
coat of excellence.
Ba-ba!
Boom.
I think Nate froze. At least he did for me.
Right.
So
You
All
froze
right.
for me, so someone doesn't want us speaking.
We're all freezing. We're all freezing together.
it's
Yeah,
the
I
Australian
can't tell if I have
government
a
trying to
delay
suppress
anything.
it.
Yeah,
Oh well.
they don't want people talking about Muriel's wedding. So, for me, I am giving this to Toni Collette.
As am I.
I almost gave it
Clean
to
sweep.
the director purely for his ability to get the ABBA music,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
but Toni Collette just fucking nails this.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, she's phenomenal. And watching this movie, like I've seen Toni Collette in so many things, and I never thought like I'm watching Toni Collette. Like this just felt like this is Muriel.
Disappeared into the character completely. Every once in a while, it'd be a little bit of Toni Collette would peek out, but then it'd be like it was like, well, yeah, I was blown away. Definitely, I'm giving it to Toni Collette. Incredible performance. I think that her performance at the center of this also makes it work for sure.
Absolutely.
I don't think it works if Muriel herself isn't just nailing every scene.
Yeah, when I started this movie today, I was like, man, why does that person look so familiar? Because I didn't look anything up. Like I normally try not to. And I was like, who is that? Why am I? And like at one point when I had to pause, I like, I'm going to look it up. I was like, that's Toni Collette. And I was like, side by side, I was like, oh, now I see it. But I was like, oh my God, no way. Like she doesn't look the same. Obviously she gained a bunch of weight for the role. She's 22 at the time. I was like, that's just such a different version than what I've seen her in, at least of the last, 10, 15 years.
Muriel's Wedding and Hereditary would be an interesting double feature.
This is the family she eventually gets. Like
after you.
All right. Should we get to closing statements?
Yeah, closing statements. Dylan, what do you got?
All right, I'm going to go shout out to Alex Spears for recommending this underappreciated film. I hope by doing this episode, I can do my part in spreading the good word. This is a wonderful hidden gem. Yeah,
I totally agree with that. Hidden gem is another great way to describe this movie. I'm going to be telling everybody to watch this. I mean, it's weird how universal I find this, even though it is kind of particular and odd. I just kind of feel like everybody's going to get a kick out of it. So, that and ABBA.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. The saddest comedy about a coming of age, just self-discovery, ABBA-infused movie you can find. All right.
Even when the ABBA wedding song came on in the church.
Oh, I do. Everybody's like, is that ABBA? ABBA?
So good. But again, this movie just knew how to use that music.
Yeah.
It's for real. All right. Is it my turn to put a wrap on the show?
It is.
It is. Adam, you got the out?
I do. Take it away when you're ready, Dylan.
Since I've met you and moved to Sydney, I haven't listened to one ABBA song. That's because now my life's as good as an ABBA song. It's as good as Dancing Queen.